So yes, you saw the title correctly. I switched to Android. Now, this is for a multitude of reasons, and in this video I'm going to go over a few of those, and why I won't be switching back to iOS anytime soon. So yeah, iOS. What a pain in the butt it has been as of late. I dailied this iPhone 13 mini for a long time, and I still like the size. I still think it's very comfortable. But it simply just stopped doing what I needed a phone to do. This phone didn't make it through the day. Not even close. And, well, those of you are saying, well, it's a mini phone. It's not going to last throughout the day. I barely use my phone. I was using this phone for a full day, and I had this one sit aside doing absolutely nothing. It was on standby like this, not doing anything. And while I was using this phone lost more battery doing nothing than this phone did while I was actually using it. And it wasn't even by a close margin either. This phone was at 70% not being used, while this phone, while it was being used all day, was at 80%. It's a bit of a problem. The other issues that I had with iOS and even macOS at this point was the bugs. Apple, as they've been growing in size and with their growing market share, seem to have become a little complacent because there are bugs in iOS and iPadOS that I've noticed that haven't been fixed. And it's frustrating to say the least, especially as someone who's been basically using Apple products for my entire life. I started out when I was like 10 years old with like an iPhone 3GS. There was no cellular on it. There was nothing there for it. It was literally just to play little games here and there as I was a very young kid. And they were like, oh, phones are cool. I then moved on to an iPhone 4S after that, and then went to a 5. And the 5 was the first one that I actually had cellular on, and that's when I turned 13. My parents thought, hey, you should get a phone with cellular so then you can actually contact us in case something were to happen, whatever. I then went from the iPhone 5 to an iPhone 7. Then, after the 7, I moved on to the SE second generation. And then after that, I moved on to a 10R. So, iOS 16, when it first came out for the SE2 and for the iPhone 10R, was horrid. Everyone knows this. When the iPhone 14 Pro came out, and then the iPhone 14s, all those stuff came out, those phones just sucked on their latest firmware. It actually had hardware issues in terms of the iPhone 14 Pro, where the camera would rattle. But yeah, it took Apple quite a long time to fix these issues. And then they left the iPhone 10 on iOS 16, which is a disgrace in my opinion, because 16 is trash. But then iOS 17 came out, and while the betas were stable for betas, I guess you could say, they weren't really that stable. Nowadays, I have tons of issues with iOS 17, even the latest versions. Mail does not sync properly. The iPad does not work properly with the Apple Pencil, with multiple glitches everywhere in the OS. For instance, if you tap a notification with your Apple Pencil, it'll open the notification just fine. However, if you go to try and clear that notification, in some cases, it will just open the Notes app instead. Why? I don't know. If you actually use an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil, the original one running iPadOS 16, the bug with the clear button with the Apple Pencil is still there, and they haven't fixed it. Oh, who am I kidding? This bug still is in iPadOS 17 to this day. If you try to clear notifications using the Apple Pencil, good luck. It will not clear the notification, and all it will do is just open Notes. Exactly what you didn't want it to do. There have been many bugs with iOS, and it's been getting really annoying. There were several times I opened the Settings app only for it to just immediately crash. There were several times where the volume just decides to set itself to 100% for no reason. So my whole change to Android spawned when I got my Google Pixel. Now, I got the Google Pixel from a coworker, and I wanted to just kind of see what it was like to use one of these, because I wasn't sure how clean Android would be. I never liked Android in the past because I never liked what corporations and different companies like Samsung or LG or Motorola would shove onto the phones and basically stuff it up with bloatware. I never liked that. However, the Google Pixel not only doesn't have any of this on its stock firmware, you can just openly flash a custom firmware to the Google Pixel, and it just works. For instance, I'm not even running the Google Pixel OS. I'm actually running an open source project called Lineage OS. Lineage OS has a build of Android 14 for every Google Pixel. So when I switched to Android, I hadn't switched my watch yet, but when I switched to Android, I popped my SIM card in this phone, and things just work. What? Things working? Yeah, no, I actually, when I first used Android, had no issues at all. There are going to be bugs, of course, especially when you're working on an open source phone like Lineage OS. There's going to be issues because it's open source. There's no money being made by the people who design the ROM. However, there weren't as many bugs as iOS had. The only bug I can still name that is Lineage OS's fault is a bug where if you have a YouTube video playing, the rest of the phone, for whatever reason, the frame rate of the phone becomes the same frame rate as the video. So if you're watching a 30 FPS video, your UI suddenly becomes 30 FPS. If you close the app, that issue doesn't persist. But it is a glitch with the OS because you go in picture-in-picture. It will also do it throughout the phone. So that is a glitch. I don't know what the issue is. It is something that needs to be addressed. But that's the only glitch I've found. There are some glitches with the apps themselves. Like, for instance, the Discord app, for whatever reason, has major issues sometimes. Other than that, it's been a nice experience. Now, the thing, too, with running open source Android is that they don't care about locking things down or forcing you to use their services. Lineage OS barely comes with anything pre-installed, and the stuff that comes pre-installed is not bloatware at all. For instance, the apps that come with Lineage OS, I'll just name a few of them here, are Calendar, Calculator, Browser, which is a very good browser, Messaging, Music, Clock, Contacts, Camera, Settings, Phone, stuff like that. I basically named off everything that it came with. There's nearly nothing built in to Lineage OS. You might have noticed I didn't even mention the Google Play Store because that is optional and you do not need to install that on Lineage OS if you don't want to. The choice that you get with Android is flippin' awesome, and that's one of the reasons why I love this phone so much. So, where do I go from here? Well, my YouTube channel was never heavily focused on Apple in its entirety. There are several videos that I've made that don't have any ties with Apple at all. However, you'll probably see more of those videos in the future now that I have less of a dependence on using Apple products. I only now use an Apple product to edit my videos and make music. Heck, I'm not even using an iPhone as my camera anymore. This is a dedicated camera, and it works pretty well. I guess I'm done with iOS. I plan to sell off my iPhone 11 and my iPhone 13 that I have just sitting around. So I actually do plan to keep one of my phones as my main phone, and that is my iPhone 10. Now, the iPhone 10 runs iOS 16 as its latest, but I plan to use it as like an easy to bring around camera device. Since my Pixel's camera is a little lackluster to say the least, I'm gonna need to get a better Pixel. It's an old one. It makes sense that it's doing that. Got a Google Pixel Watch to match with the phone, and it's been a great experience. This is basically the Google equivalent of the Apple Watch. It works really well. If you guys have had issues with Android in the past, or iOS, both of them really, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Ultimately, I don't hate iOS. I don't hate the iPhone. I don't hate iPads or iPods and stuff, and I plan to keep all that stuff around. And I still plan to make videos on this stuff too. I don't want it as a daily driver anymore because iOS has just been kind of bothering me lately. Especially because now that I've gotten used to the openness of Android and how easy it is to just do whatever you want on it, kind of just fell in love with it. Sorry guys for the long wait between videos. I do hope to address that at some point in the future. Now that I actually have a proper camera set up, I don't have a mic yet, I plan to order one, but now that I actually have a proper camera here, I've got some lights here, things look better than they used to. I am very hopeful for the future of this channel, and I'm hopeful I'll be able to get videos out here quicker and sooner. That's about it for this video. If you have any thoughts, as always, put them in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later. See ya!